But I also must say, once you've done one, that's your new baseline. So it's actually quite dangerous, because that's your new baseline, and everything that doesn't meet that baseline is not good enough anymore. So every other project is a challenge. So, oh, we're still using water. Oh my God. And we're still consuming energy. So I think that was one of the experience for us. It is a challenge, but once you've done one, it really makes it a lot easier to lift up all these aspects, materials, water, energy in future projects.
This is the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast. Revitalizing the world together. Welcome to the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast. This is your host, Neil Collins. It is a show that is supported by our work at Latitude Realty. In it, we explore our natural and built environments and how they can be used as a force for good. The show sets out to inspire impactful ideas, meaningful change, human wellness, and ecological restoration through interviews and easy-to-digest conversations. Our guests range from industry leaders to iconoclasts, from both well-known figures to everyday people leading extraordinary lives. This is a show for people looking for education and inspiration on how real estate can be done differently. Hi, everybody. This is Neil Collins, the host of the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast. It is a pleasure to be joining a conversation with Emmanuel Pauwels, who is in the Spanish Pyrenees. Emmanuel, thank you for joining us. I'm really excited. I've been following your work. It's been recommended from Green Living Projects, and even the home that you are sitting in now. I've seen some amazing pictures and read some of the backstory. But thank you for taking the time to come on and join us on the podcast.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Neil. I'm glad to be here.
Emmanuel, I know you as a regenerative practitioner, and we were just talking about how do we even introduce you with Green Living Projects. You're not a principal. You guys, it's a consultancy, and I want to just tell the listeners, if you go to Green Living Projects, the first thing that you see is that it's a consultancy to nourish people and projects, allowing them to create radical shifts towards sustainable living. And I think that is just a wonderful and compelling and aspirational statement. But I'd love to first, before we get into the work that you're doing, just tell us a little bit about yourself, because we've had a couple people on from Europe, but not too many. So it's always a treat to get to hear people from very different backgrounds than ourselves.
Well, Neil, I started Green Living Projects more or less 15 years ago, and I think there was a defining moment when I started it, because I was working in a completely different industry. I have lived and worked in different countries in the world. And at one point I was trying to find what I was going to do. And I got involved in a renovation project. And then I started exploring the idea of building wood houses, wood as a structural, which is in Europe very unusual. I mean, in the US, it's quite different. And I was connecting with Asia, and somebody was going to build some prefab homes there and send them to Europe. And then one day I thought, this is completely wrong. This is wood coming from tropical forests, made by people in an Asian country which are not being paid properly. And so this is when I started waking up, and I started going all these building exhibitions, and I started learning about sustainability. So that was my first wake-up call. And I said, oh my God, this industry of which I have not been part is really, I want to be active in this. There is a big problem here. So I came in with beginner's eyes, but I connected with the fact that there is a huge environmental impact. And that's why I started Green Living Projects. And for the last 15 years, one of the tools that in which we still believe in it, but we thought it was more powerful, was LEED certification. So our main business was, let's get buildings LEED certified. But over the years, my frustration only grew because I was engaging with people that wanted to get a certificate, but not have a deep conversation about how we engage with nature and how we, work with nature. So I think that's a couple of years ago. I was able to put an end to that frustration when I discovered the courses from Regenesis. And I joined the TRP courses from Regenesis. And so now, finally, I have new tools and a new practice trying to really talk about the real issues, and not just chase some certification.
What were those early on projects like that you're doing LEED certification on? Were they commercial, residential?
First commercial. And as you may know, for residential, you have a different procedures, which is a green rater that does a verification, which you don't have in commercial projects. And those green raters didn't exist in Europe. So we set up a training and we created a group of European green raters collaborating with an American LEED for Homes provider and trainer. And then things evolved, and now the USGBC has training programs. So the technical capability of doing verification is now also present in Europe, and we see LEED rising in residential as well. So now we're working on both.
Interesting. And so what brought you to the Regenesis Institute?
Well, it's a bit of a journey. I got in touch with the Living Building Challenge from ILFI. And I just happened to renovate this home, this Calgercho, and I thought back then that Living Building Challenge was really beautiful and it was a vision, but I was wondering, can this really be done? And I said, well, why don't I just try it? I am the owner, it's my own house, so I make the decisions. And my team was very motivated, and I found a lot of other people motivated. Let's give it a try. So that was 5 years ago. And not really knowing what I was getting into, but it was by the way you start looking at materials and how do you get net positive in water, energy. That's how, doing a lot of research about the project, I came across Regenesis and TRP. And when I read what they were offering, it resonated with me. I said, this is what I need, because Living Building Challenge is about what is required of the building, but it doesn't tell you anything about the process. And I was looking for a process and a methodology to design and develop. And that's really what I found with Regenesis. And it's just the beginning of a new journey, because now this is my new vocation. And it's a practice. And it requires regular practice, and you slowly grow. So that's why I feel I'm a beginning practitioner. There's always somebody who's better than you, and somebody who maybe is, still is a little bit earlier in his or her journey. But it's a never-ending journey, because it really starts from a whole different way of thinking, which is a living systems thinking. And our mechanical thinking is so deeply ingrained in each and every one of us that you catch yourself all the time falling back into that thinking. So, it's going to be a long journey, but it's an evolution. And at the same time, I see things changing in society. Today we can have conversations which maybe 10 years ago we couldn't have. I don't know if you have similar experiences, because you are involved in real estate, and you're doing homes with that are based on certain principles and values. And I think you also feel that there is now room and space to do these kind of things that maybe 10 years ago didn't exist.
I think just the statement, what's been coming up for me a lot lately is that it's about the process and not the product.
Yeah.
And whenever you're in the business of actually promoting these kinds of projects in these homes or these buildings, it is the focus is on the product, and that's what stops the scroll, and that's what we've built a business upon. But the deeper work is exactly what you're saying, is what is the process. And now our work is shifted to how do we highlight what that process is, what makes it so special, and what really goes into it. And that is the more of the conversation of regeneration, because I think that we can highlight a living building and be quite amazed by it, because it is a feat of so many different things coming together. But what really takes place, I think, that is worth exploring more is what is that transformation of all the people that have come together to do that, and even the visionaries behind the project, of how have they transformed themselves to manifest an asset that is quite tangible. But I think a lot of the work, more than anything, and what I'm trying to get at, is that there's a spiritual element to the work, and that's what I'm perceiving, or maybe you're hinting at it, is that there is a shift that's taken place to enable you to continue down a new path.
Definitely the spiritual element, Neil. And I realized that I started out as well on the very material level. You look at materials and equipment, but there's a moment where you make a switch, and you say it's not really about the building. It's about what this building enables to happen. And I shifted to, what am I going to do here? How can I inspire people? How can I bring people here and engage with them, and so that they can do their projects? And yeah, I think it's still pretty cool that I produce more energy than I consume, and I only live off the rain, and I'm happy. Like today, it rained, but it's just, there's another dimension. And you say spiritual. Actually, I started getting interested in Tao Buddhism, which, for some reason, when it's just the whole regenerative thinking is so aligned with a Tao Buddhist thinking. It amazes me. So, and I'm getting into this Buddhism, and it's very much aligned.
This is new to me. You've got to go deeper and explain more. Well,
the thoughts and the philosophy about life is regeneration is about life, and so they are so aligned. It's about the basic ideas of Buddhism is about being of service to something larger than us, being communities, people, nature, and finding happiness in being able to make a contribution. It's about feeling that necessity to make a contribution, but then being able to be unattached from the outcome, because that's no longer your responsibility, as long as you know you've done the best you can. Because the most difficult part in regenerative practice is they sometimes say you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. So you know where the water is, and you can lead a project or a team to the water, but they have to drink. They don't always drink. If that doesn't happen, then you shouldn't be frustrated. You have done your work, and you should move on and try again. And so there's a lot of these parallels, and I'm still discovering. It's also recently I started getting into this, but I find a lot of inspiration and parallels, and it enhances my I feel it enhances my regenerative capabilities.
Wow, that's fantastic. I mean, that and quite beautiful. I've written that down on my paper. I've got to read more into that. You had mentioned that you're in Calguercho.
I
Excuse
know
me.
it's very hard to pronounce.
We're butchering. Does that mean anything? Does that translate?
Well, it actually does. When I started out, I wanted to change the name. I said, "Oh my God, Carl Gercho. Nobody's going to be able to pronounce that." It costed me half a year to be able to pronounce the name of my own home. But then I detected, I started investigating the meaning of that name. And Gercho means not completely straight, a bit crooked. It means, has a double meaning, cross-eyed, to be cross-eyed. But also it means something it's got a little twist. And then remember Hundertwasser, the Austrian architect who had a manifesto against the straight line. And it's a bit like that. Gercho is like the line that's not straight. And it's a renovation of an old home. It's the originally over 700 years old. It's a medieval home that I restored. Nothing straight here. There's not one straight wall. And we started working with this principle, is it Gercho? It's like if we're doing something in the garden or building something, it can't be exactly straight because that's not natural. And we have a lot of rounded things and shape. So Gercho became sort of the theme of the way we work here. It's never straight. It's always a little bit bent, like every tree, like everything you see in nature. So in the end, I did discover this meaning and I liked it. So although it's hard to pronounce, I think it's got a sense and a connection with its past.
The Japanese would call that wabi-sabi.
Wabi-sabi, yes.
But let's start. I'd love to hear a story of this place because I think it might parallel your career as well. And a lot of the interest that I have of what's going on in the industry right now. I know that you started to work on this project in 2015, but what's the genesis? When I've seen that you're a professor in Barcelona and your team used to be based in Barcelona, but you're not there currently. So when did you purchase the property? What was the intention and really how did that unfold?
I think I purchased like 5-6 years ago, 2015, like you said. And because I was living in Barcelona, I enjoyed the city very much. I've lived for 15 years in Barcelona. I moved to Barcelona from the north of Europe for the climate, for the culture. But over time, tourism became much more invasive, massive, and I've seen the city change. Shops and gentrification, shops change, and I was longing for nature. I think a lot of people do, and I felt I needed a place outside of Barcelona. So that's why I bought a property. It's a 3-hour train ride from Barcelona, and so that was the reason for purchasing the house. And like I said before, I just happened to get in touch with Living Building Challenge, and I just decided to give it a try, and it all started from there. But the home it's not just a home; it's a place where I can sleep 12 people. And over the last 12 months, I have hosted 24 volunteers, which initially was not the idea, but these things emerge and they evolve and they grow. And I started working with volunteers, and the calling was, if you are really tired and you don't know how to deal with this climate change, which is such a big problem, maybe I can offer you some tools and a process to get engaged and find your position in life and how you can deal with this. And so that apparently was very attractive. I have so many requests from volunteers. They stay between 1 and 3 months. And so I decided to practice with them the regenerative methodologies and process that I was learning from Regenesis. And at the same time, they helped continue with the construction of the house, and that's been absolutely beautiful. And now there's not much more to build. I mean, so the energy is going to change. So I don't know what the next step is going to be. I'm thinking about this, but it may be a place where we can do workshops or in that, always within that idea of regeneration. How can I bring this thinking to more people? That's basically what I would like to try to do, also using this house as a place where people can stay. And one of the regenerative principles is your design for evolution, and I really realize that now. You said it's no longer about the product. No, it's not. It's about something that keeps evolving, and it keeps changing.
Well, let's go into that more. Design for evolution. How do you interpret that, and what is your role, and how do you facilitate that? Even on projects that you're not the owner of, but you're helping to facilitate through a consultancy.
Well, there's a couple of ways of looking at that. First of all, there's a model called the 5 capitals, where the largest capital is nature. And within that capital, we have human and social capital. And then we have the built infrastructure and finance, money. So those are the 5 capitals. There are 3 living capitals in there, which is nature, humans, and the social. And there are 2 capitals which are not alive. It's the built environment and money. So basically, and they all need a return. It's not that they're not important, they are important. So because you need investment and money to build something, but it needs to be in service of people, community, or nature. It must have that purpose. It must contribute to that. So when you design a house or a building, you're designing for something living that will evolve. And I'm sure many people know this. When you have a house, after a while you say, oh, maybe we should extend the bathroom, or we want another room. And we know things keep changing. So if we design a house, design it in such a way that it is easy to make those modifications in the future. And you can do that technically, depending how you do certain walls and structure. But you can design a home to give it the capability to be changed and modified without huge interventions and renovations. That will be one practical example in a home environment to design for evolution, because you don't know what's going to happen in 5-10 years, and if it's too rigid and fixed for a specific use, one day you're going to have to start rebuilding it.
How does that mesh with more of the high performance side of a net positive building for energy, for water? You're calibrating some of these things for occupancy and space and size. Do you see that there a potential conflict with the evolution of the space?
It's true that you design for a very specific occupancy if you wanted to go net zero energy or net positive energy in water. That's absolutely right. But you can also design some potential additional capacity. I mean, if you have, you can add PV panels in the future. If you think about the space and you say, well, here eventually we could put some additional PV panels. They're not necessary yet. If you want to upgrade your energy production one day in the future. The same with rainwater. For rainwater, you have 2 important variables: your capture surface and your tanks. So I know I have space to add additional tanks. In case in the future there's a higher occupancy. I have other sources of water that capture areas which I'm not using. So you can include these aspects as well in potential for future upgrades, I think.
Interesting. And so with your project, were you the designer on it? Or did you bring in an outside firm?
We worked with an architectural firm, but it was kind of challenging because our experience is that when you present professionals, whether it be a construction company or engineering company or an architectural practice, with the living building challenge requirements, they are so different from standard practice that I have no idea how to price this, or they have no idea how much work is going to be involved. So yes, I did work with external companies, but in the end, we decided with our own team to do all the extra work, which a lot of the work is sourcing materials and vetting materials. The concepts of how to work with water and rainwater are not standard practice. So we did our own research, and I started looking for the people that I needed to make that happen. Once we decided, for instance, to recycle gray water with biologically with constructed wetlands, and I started looking for, okay, who has built constructed wetlands, and then we started pulling in these specific skills into the team. When we decided to do the interior finishes with a clay and straw finish, I started looking for people that still had those skills. And actually still there are young people that are really motivated, what we call here bioconstruction. And so, but yeah, I think we did most of the work, and we even decided to take on construction ourselves because I couldn't find any construction company that was willing to go into this adventure. So we hired people, actually a couple of people from the village, and we set up our own team, and so we built it. I mean, not myself, but we set up our own team to build it.
They don't call it a challenge for nothing, right?
Yes, it is a challenge. They were very good in choosing that name, yes.
Hey, everybody, this is Neil. We are going to get back to this great conversation in just 1 second. But I think it's fair to say that right now, we are facing some pretty unprecedented challenges in the 21st century. I mean, you name it, environmentally, socially, economically, we've got some big problems that we need to overcome. And that's why, for me personally, and the people that work with us at Latitude, we want to dedicate our time and our energy so that we are not only working to put food on the table and a roof over our heads, but also make the world a better place. And so if you are at all interested in combining your sustainability values with a very powerful financial model of real estate, then I highly encourage you to check out what we are doing at Latitude. We are creating something truly special with a tribe of change agents that for now is working across North America. And hopefully one day in the future, with you coming on board, we can be working across the globe. So please check us out. You can go to www.chooselatitude.com, or you can find us on social media at latitude.realty on Instagram, and we are also on Facebook. Okay, let's get back into it. I'm curious. I've heard from other people that have built living buildings that have been certified, and they all have different reactions to this. Of just the biggest challenge that you came across in aiming towards becoming a certified living building. What was the most difficult? Was it finding those tradespeople, or was it the materials?
The biggest challenge, I would say, is people's mindset. Because everything exists. So all the technology, all the materials, it exists. But you have to work with those materials. So it's not that's like, I want to make this and I'm going to try to find a material. No, let's see. It's like taking a whole set of Lego blocks and say, this is it. We got to build it with this, and then you start working with the materials. Instead of saying I design and then I'm going to find the materials that I want to put in my design. So that changes in the process. You do the material research first, you have compliant materials, and then you start designing what you have. In general, because there are exceptions, and it all exists, but you have to put in the work. For instance, of course, there's no PVC, no new PVC in the house, and you need certain drainage pipes. eventually we found a company in Belgium that is using sort of baked clay, and that's how people used to do it before they were using cement drainage pipes. And so the hardest thing is mindset, because and that's where with our own team we do have the mindset, and we did have the motivation to put in the time. But I also must say, once you've done one, that's your new baseline. So it's actually quite dangerous, because that's your new baseline, and everything that doesn't meet that baseline is not good enough anymore. So every other project is a challenge. So, oh, we're still using water. Oh my God. And we're still consuming energy. So I think that was one of the experience for us. It is a challenge, but once you've done one, it really makes it a lot easier to lift up all these aspects, materials, water, energy in future projects.
That's fantastic. I want to come back to that, but I don't want to forget a thought, because I need to underscore to the listeners that this is a very different process from going to an architect or a designer, them coming up with a design, and then getting the materials to go forth and build that. And it's almost that is a transactional process. Mm-hmm. And the first time that I was ever exposed to a different way was through this builder called Lloyd House, that I don't think is living anymore, but he would build out of driftwood he collected on the British Columbia coast of Canada. And so just imagine these huge trees that he would base his entire design around. And from the staircase that would lead up through the house to the way that the roof line kind of curved, and just all the wood-shaped shingles that he would collect, like to design and build out of driftwood, of what the material first, to create such rich and organic homes was truly an eye-opener for me, to think that architecture could be done a very different way.
And I'd like to build a bit on that, Neil, because another thing that I've learned is we have this, and because you said transactional, we have this process which is concept design, schematic design, design development, construction. And I learned it's not a natural process. The process of designing and building is cyclical. And so you find some materials. We also did a lot of things with driftwood in this project. So you find driftwood and say, oh, what can I do with this? And then you start building something. So you are designing and you build, and then there's something else you find, and then you design again and you build. And so instead of having this design phase and a construction phase, design and construction are continuously blending and repeating. They're fractal. And sometimes until you reach a certain stage, like structure a room, you can have a feel for the space and you start looking, and then you can decide, okay, well, I think this staircase would work well here. And so there's no point in trying to design that earlier. But we need to, transactionally, we need to ask for a building permit. We need to define these things. And it's not a natural process. So if you take out that transactional part, it would be very different. And there is no need sometimes to detail so many things, because as you're building, they may change. You have new inputs, new information, new materials. And that was also very interesting. And I witnessed that. This cycle is just much more going back and forth and not so separated.
That is a perfect tie-in of where I wanted to go, which is how do you think this process can inform the future building of our society, whenever that is a much more involved process, and the mechanical mind is so embedded in the design and the permitting and the financing, that is there, what do you see as how do we move forward? How do we evolve as a society to encapsulate this kind of process?
Well, now it's being led by this practice. We have to, we've been taught these are the phases, and you have to do this, and these are the deliverables at each phase. So we have to let go of that to start. That shouldn't lead the process, and we should accept. And we got to, you can rethink the process and accept that maybe at a certain stage we have enough with certain sketches or ideas, and accept that more organic flow. And because second reason for this is budget. We want to know exactly how much it's going to be. So that desire to know the number leads us to wanting to define everything in detail. And depending on the type of teams, and countries, it's never exactly the budget that we had at the beginning. Usually it's more. And so it's not going to be right anyway. And secondly, in the process, if there's not enough money, there are other ways of getting things done. Happened in my case, one point, no more budget. So you stop, and then you find some more money, or the whole concept with the volunteers, which was another type of exchange. I was exchanging some of my experience and knowledge, and they put in the hours. So it happened without me having to pay somebody to do the work. So there are different ways of making things happen, but it's our obsession with having an exact number and a budget that, if you think about it, that defines a lot of this process. If we can let go of that, I have more faith in that things will work out, and it may take a bit longer, but eventually it'll get done. That, I think, is needed. Letting go of that control that we want over time and budget. In Greek, there are two concepts of time. One is chronos, which we know very well. The other one is called kairos. Kairos is the concept of time where things happen when they're ready. Nature works with kairos. The tomatoes in my garden, they will, when it's right, they will appear. They will be ready. I can't force that. Nature works with kairos, the seasons, the conditions when they are right. And we work in the same way because we are living beings. So sometimes you have this idea. They say, yeah, now it's coming together. You don't know why, but all of a sudden you go, yeah, now I can see it. Why did it happen at that point in time? I don't know. But if you tell me, no, you have to know this by Wednesday. So I don't know. It didn't happen. So we are very focused on this chronos, this time, this mechanical, this control, and we have to let go of these things for these more natural processes to occur. That's sort of, I think it's part of the answer.
How do your clients react to that process and that methodology? I'm curious.
That's a good question. Clients are currently project developers. They do not understand this at all. But I see a lot of other people that do understand this. And so instead of projects being developer-led, I see a growth in projects that are purpose-led, in which certain skills that a developer has, like maybe land acquisition or certain processes, are useful, but it's not leading the process. And I see an opportunity for development companies to become a facilitator of a project that is led by a higher purpose, in again using this model of the five capitals, where they are part of this and they can bring skills to this, but not developer driven, because the developer gets in and says, okay, on a piece of land, how many homes can I do here? How much per home? It's like, how much money can I make? If that's your starting mindset, instead of what does this place need? What do the people here need? What will make more sense? And yes, I want to make some money in the process. That's okay. I want a reasonable return on for the skills I bring in. Everybody wants a return on what they. That's why there's this mutually beneficial relationship. So that is still very difficult with our current clients, but there are companies that are experimenting with this and that are doing it. So this will happen. Now, will it be the existing development companies that see this and maybe want to work that way, or will it be new entities created by people that see this? That I don't know, and it's still a bit early, but I can clearly see that this is happening. And sometimes when I talk to clients, I compare this to the car industry. Tesla did not exist, and they were looking at each other, and all of a sudden this new company came up, and this is now defining the business. And that was coming out of nowhere. And I think there's going to be other companies, whether they come from existing development companies or they will be created new, but there will be new entities that are going to work like that will be successful. And then the traditional companies will say, what's going on here? So that I think what's going to happen. But I agree with current clients. Some of them, they start seeing this, and so we can start talking about maybe trying to find these kind of projects. But it's still very difficult.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you set the high watermark for yourself, but I also think that you set the high watermark for the industry in terms of inspiring what could be and what can be is a better way, instead of so aspirational that it's now a tangible. That I was talking with a developer out of Seattle the other day with Green Canopy Homes, and he was talking about how with the way that we value a real estate project, it's based on comparable sales, and with every project that they are bringing forth into life, that it's setting a new kind of high watermark that the other developers are now having to look at and almost chase after and change their ways that's rooted a bit more in convention, to now saying, yeah, how do we incorporate some of these elements into that? And it's still rooted in a sustainability paradigm. But I do think that is still part of the process. And people like to push back on me to say, like, we just need to skip over sustainability altogether. For me personally, it seems like part of the journey is to realize we've got to do a little bit less bad in order to do good. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, there's a really great framework for that called the Three Horizons. And I don't remember exactly who developed it by heart, but there is existing business which is called the H1 horizon, and so that's the predominant business, and that works from the mindset of sustainability or lessen the impact. And there's another horizon, and in the framework it's called H3, which is just appearing a little bit, but it's not very, very, very small. It's what we are talking about. But it's emerging. And so you just can't, you have to respect the fact that the existing building is there. I mean, you have to accept that and respect that. And then there is the H2 horizon, which is in between, which is the horizon of innovation. So I think it's essential to innovate. and keep thinking, what can we do differently? And then that innovation may serve Horizon One, and just maintain the existing business. That can be. In the framework, it's called H2 minus. It means like, okay, but it can be an H2 plus. It can help to nurture the emerging business. And over time, H1 is going to go down and H3 is going to go up. We just don't know how much time that's going to take. But accepting that both coexist is important. You can't say, oh, this is no good anymore. No, you can't do that, because then all of a sudden we would have to throw everything away. So you have to work transforming and accepting there is existing business. And we also do these kind of projects, because we have this conversation in the company, say, we can stop doing this. Well, then we won't have nobody will pay our salaries anymore. Okay, that's not a solution. So let's try working and then accept that both exist. And let's try to do the existing business, that the sustainable, do as good as we can, and work on the two at the same time. And we have to accept that.
That's quite interesting. I'd love to get new frameworks as well, because you're the first guest we've had from. I'm trying to think back when the last time we had a European on. It might have been in Poland, but I'm curious what the temperature is for things like living building, or if you're seeing more systems thinkers come out of the continent, and really where you see the industry going over there.
I think there are more living buildings in the US than in Europe. I don't think so. I mean, that's a fact. ILFI is based in Seattle, so there is this all ecosystem and network that developed in the US, and it has been catching on with certain architectural practices, and so there's more traction today in the US than in Europe. So in that way, Europe is a little bit behind, but definitely it will also keep growing in Europe. On the other hand, because I work, for instance, with GBES, with educational offerings we do with them in the US, and so I talk with Charlie and we compare notes. As far as renewable energy, for instance, concerned, I think Europe is way ahead of the US. I mean, here, renewables are not even discussed anymore. They're like, building code is asking for a lot of renewables. We have this near zero energy regulation on a European level. So there I see, more advanced here in Europe than in the US. It may also have to do with the fact that in the US, in the end, they're regional or national regulations. They're very different. And here it is more a European drive with a new Green Deal, and there's a lot of money going into reaching those targets that were agreed in the Paris Agreement. And so I know there was talk of a new Green Deal in the US, and we don't want to get into politics, but I think in that way that there is more drive here in Europe. As far as practitioners is concerned, I think regenerative practitioners, that's growing everywhere, because we're all humans and we can all feel. It doesn't matter if we live in the US or in Europe or in Asia. There's enough people that can really resonate with, oh my God, we need to try to start working from this different paradigm. The whole eco-village movement is just all over. It's growing. A lot of young people are asking different things. Not only the environment. In university, when I engage with students, and you ask them about what kind of organization they want to work in, it's not the organizations we have today. I don't know if you're familiar with Frédéric Laloux, who has written a book called Reinventing Organizations. And it's very interesting because he talks about different paradigms in organizations, and the last paradigm he called TEAL, TEAL, is really a regenerative paradigm. And what you see in the built environment and in organizations, there's a parallel there. And so there's not only a change needed in what we build or in the projects we do, but in the organizations involved in the industry, they also need to evolve to this TEAL level, which Frédéric Laloux describes in his book. So all these evolutions have to work together so that we can work with different organizations in a more conscious way on more conscious project.
Wow, you mentioned the Eco Village movement, and we had to participate in a rebuild conference. That was
I've seen you.
Portugal, and I'm curious if the same phenomenon that has gone on in the U.S. because of COVID, which has been more of a decentralization of where people are choosing to raise their families and live, that it's no longer these power centers and megapolises and metropolises. Is that happening in Europe as well? Are you seeing more migration?
Very strongly, yes. We're actually involved in two projects. One which is very real, meaning there is land and finance. Another one which is still in an earlier phase. And I'm following very closely, with the Rebuild conference, what's going on there. I think when you look at the participants, a lot of them were based in Europe and in US. And like I said, it's not specifically, it's all over. So yes, it's a very strong new wave, because there was a similar wave, I think, in the 60s, but there's a new wave also, like you said, with the pandemic, which is manifesting very strongly. And so we'll see. Well, let's use some of that energy and see if projects can come out of that. But it's very present, yes.
I'm really excited about that. I know it's really uprooted a lot of people's thoughts on local communities and things like that. But just the transformation, or the ability to choose, we don't necessarily have to be living in these huge cities away from family and friends and the kind of community atmosphere that we want to grow up in. And it seems like Europe has already been attuned to living more in community than we have on this side of the Atlantic for a long time.
Well, I think historically, Neil, we have more built history. We have these villages that are from the medieval times, and so they have certain way they're organized, which are based on what we now call regenerative, but water flows or where roads cross and edges, and whereas the history of the US is very different. It was actually Europeans moving to US and then starting to impose on that. So that it's very, very different. It's very hard to compare. We still have this stronger connection, I think, to these villages. And for instance, in Spain, but also in Italy, in other countries, so many abandoned villages. It's around me, there's villages all over the place. They're abandoned. There's two guys living, one person there, one person, they're all in ruin. So there's a huge opportunity to rebuild existing villages for people. And there is a tendency, the size of our cities is not natural. If you look at natural laws, it's not right. There's a certain hierarchy in the way cities should be built, from small villages to larger, and in nature, they're like between 5 and 7 levels. And so when you look at that with this nature lens, the big cities, they don't fit in that. And we know that their footprint is so large, the contamination. So So yes, there is. You read the statistics that people say, well, by that time, so an even larger percentage of the world population will live in these mega cities. But at the same time, when you think about it, more and more people want to go away from these cities. So I don't really know how it's going to play out, but there's this drive to move away from the cities, because a lot of people experience that it's no longer a healthy human environment. And it's very hard. Yes, there are great cities like Singapore, and they are incorporating green, but you're still in a city. There is a stronger connection that people are longing for, and so I think that's going to create a lot of opportunities. That wave and energy, and see how we can materialize that.
Yeah, but and I think it's so spectacular that while we're talking, you're sitting in the Pyrenees, having this conversation, and I've been on that journey yourself from Barcelona to the mountains.
Yes, actually, yes.
Yeah, how fantastic. Emmanuel, let me conclude with asking just where can people find out more about your work, and if they want to travel down the regenerative practitioner's footpath, what do you think that looks like?
The best way to get in touch with me is through my LinkedIn profile, which is you search for my name, Emmanuel Pauwels. That's how you can get in touch. And like I said, if I am thinking about developing programs, but if people travel in this area and they're curious, I'm always open to receive them. If I'm here most of the time. So I would say my LinkedIn profile would be the best way to get in touch with me, Neil. Unless you're looking for something else, but
I'm looking for a volunteer opportunity on a new project that you're going to be doing. I think the 12 or 24 or however many volunteers came through to help with your place now is just such an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, the volunteering, the way it has been working is I have 3 months of volunteers, and then I have some time without volunteers, and I have another 3 months. So for me, it allows me also in my cycle, it's good to be by myself or with friends, and then I have this community, and then for several months. And so this is sort of the dynamic, and I think I will continue that. And whenever that cycle ends, and when I'm in a cycle without volunteers, I think, okay, what's going to be the purpose of the next volunteerships? It's been focusing on building over the last 12 months, but now I need to change the focus. It may be more permaculture oriented, because I'm also in process of becoming a permaculture designer. So yes, there will be new opportunities, but I haven't communicated that yet. It's in a developmental process, which is going to be after the summer, but there'll be different cycles. Like I said, design for evolution, it evolves. The skills needed it changes. But if somebody gets in touch with me on LinkedIn, and I can give them updates and more information. So
it's an emergent process.
Yes, it is, exactly.
Emmanuel, thank you for your time and for the work that you're doing, because it's the conversations like these that just give me so much inspiration, and it's like drinking from a philosophical well that is great just to really inform our work. And I know a lot of other people that tune into this just get a lot out of it. So I appreciate the willingness and the thought leadership, or in the thoughtfulness to the work and how you're impacting society.
You're doing the same in your real estate business, Neil, and I'm amazed to see what you're doing. As I'm following it on Instagram, all the beautiful places that you are involved with. So I'm really glad to see that this, for instance, in Europe doesn't exist, Neil. So maybe you should expand and set a business here in Europe.
I would love to. I would love to. That is the plan. So
All
one
right.
step at a
Great.
time. Thanks,
All
Emmanuel.
right. Okay. Well, it's a pleasure.
Okay, everybody, that is a wrap. This is another just great episode that I'm so glad that you're able to tune in. And thank you for being interested in regenerative real estate. What we are trying to do is help people and planet thrive together by using the built environment as a catalyst. And so I've got a couple big asks for you. Number one is, can you please go to wherever you're listening to this podcast, leave us a rating and review. Those actually go so far. And since this is such a passion project for us, we really want to be able to attract the best thought leaders from around the world. Second is that if you really like the content that we're putting out, you can find us on our own Medium publication called Regenerative Real Estate. We also have a very active community on Facebook, which is called Regenerative Real Estate and Design, which you can request to be a part of, and we would love to have you. And third, this goes to what we do every single day, helping buyers and sellers demystify sustainability by working with people that want to either buy a property and are trying to figure out the financing of how do I actually live out my values? How do I put that water catchment system on there? Or how do I go finance a solar panel PV array? Or maybe I want to live closer to nature. And what are the properties that are out there that I can do that? And so we represent buyers like that. We also happen to represent sellers that maybe they've already invested in sustainable features. Maybe they have a living building or a LEED certified project. We want to help tell that story. So much of what goes on in the real estate industry is transactional thinking at best, and it translates down into agents just really don't know anything about sustainability. And for us, we think that the value is there, and we want to help highlight really the intrinsic value of it, not just the bedrooms and the baths and the square feet of what typical marketing goes on. So if you know of anybody that wants to buy or sell these kinds of properties that we're talking about, please reach out to us at Latitude, and be sure to subscribe for another great episode coming up next week.